Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of the X Button. I'm one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me here is the killer of
Paul,
the killer of chaos.
the killer of chaos, shopper of American Eagle.
Yes, Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Alejandro. We have had quite a week, haven't we?
Yes, especially like why this is a special occasion is that we're recording this a little later than usual because we just had a feast that
Yes, we
went from last Thursday all the way till right now. Because we're recording this for context an hour or two after we just saw Nintendo's Direct. So for people that don't know or that haven't even seen the title of this, like, yes, this is the E3 2021 edition of the X Button. So our first E3, finally, because we got robbed of it last year.
no.
Instead, we had to like endure 4 long summers of randomness. So which we may still have to suffer that maybe eventually because who knows, because we still have a few that have not said anything. But Paul, before we dive into the individual things about this E3, what do you think of E3 2021? I have some thoughts, but I want to hear from you.
I okay, so I guess I'll start by saying that I had pretty low expectations all in all. I expect the only things that I really expected were things that we either had confirmed already, and it felt like it was about that time to see more of it,
Mm-hmm.
or something that like it's been a little while. Maybe we'll see something interesting. But for the most part, I was so busy that I couldn't really focus on getting my hopes up for E3.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, most of it, I wasn't actually as disappointed as some people were, especially for some specific hot button topics that we're going to touch on today.
Mm-hmm.
But I was blown away by a few things, met my expectations with a few others, and definitely was a little disappointed with a few showings as well, just from the sheer maybe lack of professionalism and
Mm-hmm.
kind of all over the place. Some of it was, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we've been in a year into the pandemic and winding down in some countries, so I feel like that's less of an excuse now
Mm-hmm.
to come up with whatever you're going for and. Yeah, but that's my thoughts overall, I'd say. What you think?
Yeah, so to me, it's like it's multi-layered what I think about this E3. So first of all, obviously you mentioned the big thing, the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic last year killed the show. Like none of that happened, and that's where Keely's Summer Gamefest idea kind of came forward. That was a little too scattershot for it to really work last year, which is something that he did different this year. He was the official kickoff of this event. So because of how development timelines work, and we know that the pandemic really messed up the development schedules of many of these devs, like many delays, and just thinking about what the workflows have been.
Hmm.
Like watching this E3 was a reminder that we are right now at the thick of where that was most affected because many companies showed up to this thing, and I'm don't understand why they showed up. I think someone put it. I don't know if you saw the tweet that I put in our group chat. It was Dan Stapleton from IGN. Like companies like Gearbox, Ubisoft, even Square Enix, Take Two, even where they had their thing with that diversity thing that we talked about last time. That
Yeah.
it felt like the equivalent of they were given homework and they showed
Oh,
up with like
they
they
didn't
were given
read the
a
book,
book
but
report.
they
Yeah,
did a book report.
yeah, they did the book report. Like he's basically showing up without really showing up. It felt like more a participation trophy than something like that. It was genuine for them to make space this week to and it starts. Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm back home, so we're
Well,
back to the random noises now kind of
yes,
happening all the
they
time.
they just follow you no matter what country you're
Yeah,
in.
so I wonder if we're gonna see the vegetable man happening again.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, going back to that, it's like so they showed up to most of the to this event, and with the exception of both Microsoft and Nintendo, who actually came in to play, they had things to show up. These other ones, I'm like, why? Like, here's what's funny. Like the last E3 2019 was very disappointing because many companies showed up without nothing to show.
Mhm.
Like, and the excuse back then was, okay, this seems like it's the wind down year. This is like everyone, instead of like what happened the last generation, that everyone kept developing games for Xbox 360 and PS3 because they were not sure if the PS4 and the next Xbox at the time, we didn't even know it was going to be called the Xbox One, that they were gonna hit. So they were gonna like keep developing things and the things that people already had, and there was more guarantee for them to sell. And then the PS4 and Xbox One were very successful, and they were like, "Oh, we did not develop things on time." So it took a few years for those consoles to be prepared. So the excuse was like, "Yeah, maybe they learned from last time, so they're winding down early, so they can pack it up at the launch of the next hardware cycle." And unfortunately, we know what happened in 2020. So it's so funny that both the last two E3s have been like pummeled a little bit by one, the excuse that they were about to shift the cycle, and then now a global catastrophe. So, but that's still like that global catastrophe or not, like the fact is, because of those things, this show was, with the exception of the two I mentioned, this show was a disaster. Like,
See, I
uh,
wouldn't quite say it was a
like
disaster.
for
I
like a
don't
few of
think.
them, for a few of them, I'm like, how? Like,
I
let's
would
say,
say for the specific micro level, you
yeah,
have disasters for
yes,
sure.
like you, the Ubisoft one.
Macro,
Yeah, the like for example, let's start with the Ubisoft show, which was the official kickoff of E3 because
mhm.
Game Fest was its own thing, and Game Fest was good. It's like it
I
was
do
an
have to
improvement.
remember they're two separate things because they
Yes,
kind of blend together in my head.
exactly. It was synergy. So yeah, we maybe even before jumping into the Ubisoft thing, like for example, Summer Game Fest, much improved from what we got last year. That it was
Oh
like
yeah.
all scattershot. He had a big event. Many things that I don't remember that what he announced Keeley there, but there were four things. Like at least for me, for example, in that show, there were four things that I was excited for. We got remember the leak from last week where we talked about the Borderlands spinoff. The
Yeah.
Tiny Tina Wonderland was
Which
announced
I'd
there.
forgotten about entirely.
Yeah,
So it was like, oh, cool, more Borderlands stuff, more but fantasy, and then little did I remember that that was already a thing.
exactly. So, because they're taking the Borderlands 2 DLC idea of like the Tiny Tina's Castle thing from
Hmm.
the 2013 DLC, and now they're like embracing the more fantasy D&D stuff
I'm
while still
wondering
making it a looter.
how much they're going to lean into that. Like as far as I like as goofy as it is, Borderlands still does value its like what is canon, what is
Mhm.
not canon. So I wonder how they're going to fit this in with like, is this a story Tiny Tina is telling? Is it um, another like style of the characters are playing another game within that? I'm curious to see how it's going to expand the lore, if it's just
Mhm.
something completely different entirely.
Yeah, so that got announced there. That was exciting that it didn't take us that long. We remember we were like, where would that show up? Like
Hmm.
because 2K, because it comes from 2K, 2K didn't have like a slot. Thankfully, they understood that they didn't need to make a conference to not announce things.
You know, it
So
would
at least
almost make more sense if it was like a Gearbox show.
ironically, it was at the Gearbox show, and they showed the exact same trailer, not
Yeah,
even as something extra.
I wonder how they. I don't know what they were thinking with that. It's like somebody put the green light for them to use it at Summer Games Fest, and then somebody else went, "Oh wait, we already have a show, and we were going to show the same thing."
But the thing is that when you expect like it would have made sense if the trailer was in Summer Game Fest, and then that Gearbox thing, the
And then they had
developers
like
of
a
this
deep
thing,
dive.
yeah, a deep dive gameplay, but they showed the exact same trailers. So it was like,
I'm
what the
guessing they
heck?
just didn't have anything. Maybe they were shooting to have
Mhm.
like a playable model, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, but that's kind of like where the disaster kind of comes in. But I want to get into those E3 things. Just a couple more things in the Game Fest.
Yeah.
That Stranding's coming back as a director's cut.
Now, I
It's
didn't actually hear anything about this. Is what's actually changed and what's added?
so okay. Obviously, like what's funny about that announcement was beforehand, like Jeff Keighley made an interview,
Oh, that's the
the
thing when he
interview with
talked to Hideo
Kojima.
Kojima.
Hey
That
Kojima,
poor man.
yeah, it's he was like, hey Kojima, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing? Oh, Tokyo's screwed. We're still in lockdown.
It's like I'm having
Like,
flashbacks to 9/11,
yeah,
and everything that I've made has become real in 6 months after I made the game. So I have to
yeah,
rethink my entire creative
exactly.
vision. I, oh my
I was
goodness.
hollering. I was hollering because
I
like when
felt
you
so
just
bad for him though. Like
yeah.
he looked like he was operating off 2 hours of sleep. Like he was just like, hey man,
Hey,
how's
maybe
it
he was.
going?
Maybe he was because
Yeah.
Tokyo and in the United States like time difference. Maybe he
Oh
was like
shoot, you're right.
super like.
Well, no, he said that it was a recording.
No, it was, but at the same time, like at what time would
Yeah.
Akili call him, and at what time would Kojima had to be awake to receive his call?
Honestly,
To
they both looked exhausted in that video, and I
yes,
felt bad for them both.
yeah. But then after the
Yeah.
existential description that Kojima was saying about what he was planning and what how he's thinking for like his next game, whenever that is, then
Hmm.
he dropped like a one more thing at that little interview, and he dropped that Stranding's coming to PS5, and in that trailer, the game looked like it was running at 60 frames, which yes,
Yeah.
if that game already was beautiful. But there was something peculiar about this trailer. Do you watch that trailer by any chance?
No, I actually completely missed out on it.
Okay. That trailer is literally littered with Metal Gear references from
Really?
music cues. It felt like Kojima was riffing on Shadow Moses. It had the
Hmm.
kind of same style of music, the same kind of like close up camera work that you just saw like in Metal Gear Solid 5. Just the event, like you literally see the vent where you would crawl when there would be like the rats at the beginning of Shadow Moses. He
Huh.
grabs a box that he kind of jumps in, kind of like as the in joke of the box where you get hidden.
Hmm.
Makes a joke about oranges, which is again another Metal Gear reference. And some people were like speculating that maybe this is like Sony sort of teasing that the often rumored Metal Gear remake is probably coming. And they used Kojima that loves to be so tongue in cheek and use so much symbolism
Yeah.
to slowly tease it. But then the reality is that Stranding is having a PS5 version,
Yeah.
and the hilarious thing that is he calls it the director's cut. It's the most pretentious thing in the world because he was the director
Yeah.
with full creative control of that Stranding on PS4.
It's
So this is the equivalent of like the Snyder cut, but hey, Kojima, like I think only Kojima can get away with
I think
the
he is one of the only people that can pull that off.
yeah. He's allowed to smell his own farts.
My
And
goodness.
yeah, like literally, and no one like bats an eye, kind of like how people feel about Last of like Naughty Dog's current pretentiousness with like their high quality things and all that. I think Kojima can still get away with its pretentious ambitions, and people still find him endearing because it's Kojima.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also what's interesting, there, Keely was like, yeah, that's Stranding Director Scott is coming to PS5, and it'll be more fully revealed in the coming weeks. What does that say?
Yeah. That means that, well, that means one, they don't have anything right now, but um that they have
It's much
something else to
easier.
show.
It's much easier, Paul. Which was the company that skipped E3?
Sony?
There you go. Even
Oh.
it's in a few weeks, it kind of telegraphs that we're getting the Sony.
Huh.
Why would have been the Sony event by mentioning that because they're not gonna make a one showcase of a game that already released. It's just a re-release. So
Sony's done some dumb stuff, so
they have, but not for re-released games. So and because they said that they were gonna do an event, maybe not at the week of E3 like they did last year, that they kind of filled the void. But yeah, at least kind of puts the idea that we're gonna get through the summer and Sony will say something. Maybe not here in June, but maybe in July. That's still we're literally 2 weeks away from July. If
I know.
exactly,
I
so
just realized today is the 15th, which means it's halfway through the month, and I'm not prepared for how fast this month went through.
yeah, but that's what's always exciting about June and E3 time because E3 always punts the middle of the month, usually or close to the middle of the month. So
Mhm.
then it kind of just blasts you through, and then July is so slow. So
It is.
that's what made it interesting for that Death Stranding reveal was like more than just the game coming to PS5, just the subtext of it. I would recommend you to look the trailer. So
Okay.
then another, he announced a bunch of things. To me personally, the other things that popped after Death Stranding was that Evil Dead game from Evil Dead with Bruce Campbell. That he was like a
I
co-op
wasn't really
thing.
sold on it. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm never really an Evil Dead guy, so I stayed away from it. I saw like a little clip of it, and I was like, that's good for them. What kind of game even is it?
it looks like another kind of Left 4 Dead, or more like what Dead by, or it felt like the Left 4 Dead or Dead by Daylight, one of the two. But there's a co-op element to it, and to me that's interesting because we're getting a bunch of like Left 4 Dead style games this year,
We
and,
are.
yeah, so and a few more that we're gonna mention later. So that's what I found that interesting. I know it's not your cup of tea, but then Summer Game Fest was punctuated by the big one, Elden
Elden
Ring.
Ring.
That trailer was hype.
That was very interesting for sure. I wasn't expecting it to be an open world game. I wasn't expecting the depth of information that we got. I was either expecting another cinematic or maybe a little less gameplay even. So the fact that they really showed the worlds, they showed us some different methods of traversing, and the fact that your mount does not need the physics of the worlds
Mhm.
to travel, which
The
is
double
awesome
jump,
because like
the
that's
double jump doors.
exactly both a double jump, and then there was like this point where it kind of like flew up a cliff to get to the top of the next area. um I can't think of what game that makes me think of, almost like Shadow of Mordor, where it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, traversal is like you have these different levels of things, but don't worry too much about the details. We're just going to kind of flub that. It's magic. Get yourself to where you need to go, have the fun you need to. It looks, I'm very Souls-ish, which I love. I love the lore behind that. I watch all of the people breaking down lore videos of Bloodborne, Sekiro,
Mhm.
all the Dark Souls games. I don't know why I eat it up. So
Yes.
just any more of that, all good with me. It means I'm gonna have to start get shaking off the cobwebs
Mhm.
and getting myself better at games again so that I can handle it.
Yeah. It looked, I don't know if you agree with this, but it looked like he took Dark Souls and Sekiro
Kind of
and
blended them
smushed them,
together.
yeah, and put them in like an open world. And that's exciting because
Yeah, I mean,
it makes
it
me,
means they've been growing from each of their iterations.
yeah.
And that's exactly what you want. Even if it's a completely different world, you take the mechanics and the things you've learned from it. I mean, it works with anything. If you make a movie as a director, if you make a show as an animator or something, even if it has nothing to do with whatever you did, you just take the stuff that you learned from that and then you continue iterating in your own style, and suddenly you've grown
Absolutely,
immensely.
absolutely. And then for more I think about it, because I know I know there have been some chatter of people saying that so that the Souls genre has been getting overcrowded. There's been too many Souls games. And then when I think about it, it's like from the Hidetaka Miyazaki himself, the creator, like the dude that started this whole thing. Dark Souls 3 came out 5 years ago in 2016.
This has been a long time.
Sekiro was 2019, and it was the thing with Sekiro is that it felt very different from what came before. There was
Hmm.
that Souls essence, but the way the game was like structured, especially in its combat, that it was more about the pairing and the aggression instead of like the more staggering nature of Souls games with like the shield and maybe trying to dodge and all that. It's the actual Souls games, that true core of them. We haven't gotten many of those that often. Obviously,
You'd
there was a
say,
little
was it Blood Vein? No, not Blood Vein.
Bloodborne,
Code Vein.
Code, yeah,
Bloodborne, obviously. Neo and Neo 2.
yeah, but those were not made by Miyazaki. Those are like
No,
just
but
the
like
style.
I
Yeah.
think people are saying in
Mm-hmm.
general, like things that feel like it was a Souls game or that
Jedi Fallen
somebody was
Order.
very much v- bound by it. And it almost is unfortunate because the mechanic itself lends itself very well to a solid third person action game. The idea of character in the center of the screen, it's a
Lock on.
specific kind
Mm-hmm.
of, yeah, you've got your lock-ons. um I mean, people were even saying it about Ghost of Tsushima, even though I would dare
Yeah,
say
Ghost
there's
is not at
hardly
all.
anything
Yeah.
about it. But people were saying that right at the start of it, and then people complained that there was no lock-on feature.
Mm-hmm.
um and which is both mind-blowing, and I think it shows how people just really want to similarize things in their gaming worlds because it's easier to explain something you played because it's like X and Y mixed together. So whenever you see something that's third person in using a quality of life feature like the specific aspect ratio and the lock on feature of a Souls game, it's automatically a Souls like. Jedi Fallen Order,
I
another one.
mentioned it. I mentioned
Yeah,
it.
I didn't even hear that one,
Yeah.
but I just thought of it as we were talking about this. Once again, really doesn't have a whole lot to do with Souls and is more like a Metroidvania style action with like combos and hack and slash features, but people kept saying it's like a Souls-like game. So yeah, to digress,
Mhm.
I do think people just oversimilarize it, but I'm
Mhm.
very interested for Elden Ring. I love the style of everything going on. There's a
No
lot of
one makes monsters like Miyazaki and From Software
no,
that are
and
so creepy and provocative, like with the stitched together handman. Um, oh
it's
man, it's
amazing to see what people with raw creativity can do. I love looking at it.
and the best part with Elden Ring, we're
Excuse me.
close to playing it now, coming in January.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Actually, it's late January, right?
January 22nd, unless it's delayed. But and here's how I see things. Like I expect everything to always be on the danger of being delayed because why not? Like the pandemic reality is the pandemic
Yeah.
reality, even as we are things getting back to normal and we're all vaccinated and all that. Which yeah, I got finally full vaccination.
I
Um, just knowing that there's a date, even if it gets delayed, we know we're close. Like when you put at least a date, even if it gets delayed, you know you're getting a little close. You're not getting a cyberpunk situation like this cyberpunk stuff, April original release that then got pushed all the way to December, but interstitially, like those are strange occurrences. It's rare for you to get like that massive of a delay usually. So at least it kind of
that's
puts
true.
the light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm glad that it's getting closer. So if it hits January, it'll be an amazing January game
The
because
fact that it
January,
exists
yeah,
too, because a lot of people were like, okay, this was just a CG trailer.
mhm.
They don't actually, they're not working on this
The
game.
game originally
Um,
was announced at Microsoft's E3 2019 conference, and then
yeah,
it went dead
2 years
silence.
ago.
No one said anything, and everyone was making a joke because the big thing that makes this like what separates this from previous Miyazaki games is that the lore and everything is made by George R. R. Martin.
Yeah.
So everyone was making the joke. Of course, this is not going to be he hasn't even finished his Game of Thrones books. The Winds of
I'm
Wind,
convinced that man wants to move on with his life, but he wrote himself into a corner.
absolutely, and
Um,
the reaction of how the show ended may have put him in the worst
I feel
position.
like even if he did finish it, somebody probably talked to him and said, "Hey, listen, buddy, everyone's real pissed off at this. Wait like 2 or 3, 4, 5 years. Even if you die, just have it all set up, and we're
Yeah,
gonna just put it
yeah,
out
we're gonna
way later.
ghostwrite it. We're gonna ghostwrite it to
We're
the
gonna
end.
take care of you after you're dead, and after it's all taken care of, and we'll say we fixed it."
Yeah, so everyone was making a joke
Yeah,
because of the GRM connection. Maybe that's what it was never probably gonna happen. And I think that was a big get for Keeley. Like he ended his show strong, and
absolutely.
then he literally announced my next thing is Gamescom, opening night live like he did last year. So now we
Hmm.
know not to expect anything from him. So it's better. He consolidated his show to that Thursday. He
Yeah,
had he announced more than I talk. I only talked the things that caught my eye. If I from a show I can get at least 3 games that I'm interested. That to me it's a win because you don't
yeah,
need
same.
everything to like to really excite you in
Because
that.
really, like they have to cover a wide range
Mhm.
of
So
genres of everything going on, and if you get one, two, or three, it's like, hey, you know what? I
mhm.
got something to look forward to.
Yeah, and now we don't have to keep expecting. Well, this week he announced something else. Is so he's fixing the things that were wrong with Game Fest last year, which
Right.
fair. It was his first rodeo, and I'm hoping this becomes like, especially after what I saw V3. I hope he's the one that can bring more things together because I feel like packing everything into one show instead of the individual shows is better because a rising tide raises all boats instead of trying to individually say things. Because then we have things like the Ubisoft conference, which was the official first show of E3. It was on Saturday. I will preface this the saying that Saturday was when I felt the effects of my second COVID shot. So kind of like I was mentioned, that was going to be feel really droopy and more with a big body ache that was suffering there. So I
Mhm.
was already predisposed of being like already annoyed at how I was feeling. But it doesn't help that then the hour showcase that they showed, it was close to a pile of nothing. So it had three things. One of them we had already seen. We had a long discussion about it, like Far Cry
Yeah.
6. And I'm getting more excited for that game, by the way. The more I see of Far Cry
I
6.
know, Alejandro,
Yeah.
you've been changing your song.
Yeah.
What's stopping you? What's changing your
Yeah.
mind, man?
I think the more they showing the things that I want to see, like I think I from the very beginning I said that Giancarlo was gonna be like the big pull for me.
You did say that
But
was like
but
your one good thing.
yeah, but seeing more of the gameplay, I'm like, this is looking more fun than Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5, its setting felt limited. This one feels more exotic in a way. And in the things that they're showing, like you popped for the tanker that they showed. So
Yeah.
and
The
even
weirdly specific thing that I love.
yeah, and then things like you having a rooster companion that you can you can use as a companion that attacks enemies and all that. It's like, yeah, this is looking fun. Like I was already popping for just getting to see Giancarlo being Giancarlo, but then in gameplay was I'm like, yeah, that's I feel I'm ready for another one of those. Um, Rainbow Six Extinction. That was like the big. It took
Which
a
I
lot
did
of
get
that
to go
showcase.
back and
Yeah.
watch that cinematic trailer. I I was one person, so for any listeners and viewers, I play Rainbow
Siege.
Six Siege semi-regularly with a group of friends that I all play with. And so I got to play the event that was going to be Rainbow Six Quarantine at the time. And I thought it was very weird. I thought it was kind of cool. I thought we were going to see some kind of permanent PvE mode in Rainbow Six Siege that was going to bring us forward into the next wave of Siege content. And then it went away, and they said, "All right, we're never bringing that back. Thank you, bye." And we're
Mhm.
like, "That's a lot of resources to add into this game that is not going to have any bearing on the rest of the game." And then, of course, later on, we found out it was going to be a standalone, and they were testing the waters to see if people wanted it.
Mhm.
I love the concept of these characters that we've been building up over the last five or so, well, now 6-ish years. Because for I don't know how much you've paid attention, Alejandro, for like the Siege lore and whatnot, but they've been adding more and more of like
Mhm.
relationships between each of the characters. Some of them hate each other, some of them love each other, and kind of a back and forth in all of their cinematics. They're showing that more. They now have for each season a
Mhm.
2D animated short that will show like a handful of different characters interacting with each other in different
Isn't that
outfits.
supposed to be in Netflix also? Like because
People
they're doing
keep
a bunch of
saying
because they're
that
doing a
they're
bunch of
going to do
animated
that.
shows. So like even Splinter
Um,
Cell.
Somebody said that they should do that. I don't know if that was like just them speculating or not. If they did, that would be news to me. Um, but yeah, the idea is that they're so unique and they always show the characters in like new outfits and whatnot, almost to the point that you don't even recognize them. Like
Mhm.
the last one they showed for the new I'd say Native American, but I believe she is like the Canadian
Mhm.
I'm blanking out on the tribe, but she has tattoos on her chin. Really cool looking character, another medic for the group. But anyway, they had an animated one of her in a different outfit, and then two other characters also in completely different outfits, to the point that I didn't recognize any of them until they wore like a normal outfit, or that people in the comments had to say who it was based on, I think, the voice actress. So that's always weird because they're just so iconic in their normal outfits now that I don't even know who they are. But it's kind of cool that they're adding variation and different storylines for people to be interested in. And I I'm tentatively curious to really bring this all full circle.
Mhm.
Um, I like the concept. I don't know how well it's going to be like its own thing. I liked all of their crossover events thus far into like the Ghost Recon area because that kind of made sense of, hey, this is Rainbow Six doing their thing and you happen to stumble into their zone and help them out for a mission and then they're done. Same thing with Splinter Cell, even though I still want
I want
single
another
player
one.
Splinter Cell, you stupid Ubisoft
Ubisoft.
devs. I
Ah,
swear. Give us what we want. Damn you.
they
But
have they literally are blue balling the fan base with what they do with Sam Fisher. That having
I
him pop up in every game possible, even making an anime show on Netflix, but not make a game. It's insane.
I don't get it either.
The
To the point, I mean, part of it I think is like because he showed up in Rainbow Six and they said like, well, this dude is in his 60s now. He had like we literally have to give him nano machines to get him to be able to do anything that a
Mhm.
normal human should do in the military. I
that
was like, oh, that kind of hurts. Because,
yeah.
like this man is that old. Not to mention they just can't nail down what he's supposed to look like sometimes. Because like in Ghost Recon, he looks like he's in his 60s. He's got the white hair.
hmm
He's like he looks like he's hanging on by a thread sometimes. And then Siege has him with like this silver fox, black hair,
hmm
Nivea for men kind of look to him.
hmm
And I'm like, okay, what's going on here, guys? I don't really get it. And I mean that's me kind of nitpicking. I don't really care because I mean it's the same concept as like Batman and Superman. They're whatever age they have to be,
hmm
and I can just sit back and enjoy the ride. But I think I'm just a little bit salty because I really love the Splinter Cell games and I want more of them.
Yes,
Why is that so difficult to
I
ask
know. I
for?
know. Eventually they'll give in. I'm hoping
Yeah.
one day it will be the day.
I mean, I
My
almost think if they just remade like a Ghost Recon game and then made Sam Fisher the main character almost, I feel like they could make a whole game out of that and not have to change all that much.
Yeah, I keep saying
Yeah,
that because Ubisoft has become the most obsessed company in making a games as a service in pretty much every game that they do. Like that was a big part of what I hated about the Ubisoft presentation. They spend so much on old games because everything is a service game, so they had to now they have to commit. If you're a service game, you have to commit
that's
and keep
true.
updating the games with like new expansions, new content, and all that. I mean, they're sticking up with Breakpoint. I mean, even
Yeah.
though that game was a breakpoint for them, they're
Did they
still
show that there's more coming out? Because I know you mentioned it, but what's actually going on
they
in
announced
Breakpoint?
that Ghost Recon is entering, I think it was its 20th anniversary, so they're gonna do stuff around that. Sam Fisher kind of showed quickly there and like the things that they popped because I think they
Because
put Sam Fisher in Breakpoint. I'm not
they
sure.
had an entire
Be-
expansion. Because that was when I got it for $10. I went ahead and got the
but
expansions
but my
for
thing
it.
is I have to like look at this up because he appeared in Wildlands.
He did.
Like yeah, he
He
did. So
was in
I
like a couple missions in there as well.
yeah, and he had like a cutscene with like the original voice actor where he made a tongue-in-cheek reference to Solid
Yeah,
Snake and
yeah,
Gabe Logan, how he was like the last spy, and people put the
right.
Metal Gear Solid 4 Snake theme.
Oh,
Yeah, it's so
that
funny.
hurts, man.
Yeah.
I watched it. That actually I got to play that because that was one of the free missions they gave you,
hmm
and he's like, yeah, some dude from like the
And with a
Rangers.
bandana and some dude with a bandana.
Yeah, and he's like, he
Yeah.
always wore a bandana. They're like, yeah, he's gone. And he's like there was this moment where Sam Fisher looked broke, and he went, "I'm the last one
I'm the last
left."
one. Yeah.
I was
That
like,
that hits
oh,
that hits in the soul.
oh,
So
stop it.
yeah, so that's why like that's the only thing that they announced for Ghost Recon there, and obviously Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the a game that apparently never ends, is getting more expansions, more and more expansions because they're gonna stick with
I
it. So
guess like good for them. I
yeah,
mean, when I really break it down, I almost don't even see Valhalla as like the traditional single player experience anymore. It's almost like what you or I have now experienced with Destiny, where it's like
they're
it's the
making
game
everything
that you
that.
keep going back to and keep playing and keep getting better and keep doing your thing. You just don't play alongside people with you. So it's like I get it, but
Yeah,
I realize it's definitely not my kind of game anymore.
exactly. The interesting thing is that they've always since they moved away from the yearly Assassin's Creed release when they took the break with Syndicate and then Origins came out and
Yeah.
Then they quickly followed up with Odyssey because they wanted to do the games as a service thing, but Origins wasn't built like that, so they had to put one game that was built like that. Um, Odyssey was expanded fairly well, like within that year of content, especially because it didn't come out at all in 2019. Had a couple things even in 2020 before Valhalla. So this is the first Assassin's Creed that they're giving it even more time to have even more expansion. So they'll support it for the next 2 years, which for the people that are fans of that one, that's cool. I personally
Yeah.
haven't really played it because I'm waiting for a PS5 to play it at its best. Not on a
It
decrepit PS4 that's gonna. I feel that game's gonna break my
I
console.
remember we talked about it when it launched, and on
Yeah,
PS5, it's
it's super
definitely
smooth.
very
Yeah.
different.
So so I was
And I
like, I'll
understand.
wait and I'll
Yeah.
save for because even if I manage to snag a next gen console within the next month or two, nothing's really coming out right now. So might as well stack it all up.
Really
So
though.
Rainbow back to Rainbow Six Extinction. My big thing with that one was that I like Siege. I like what I played of Siege. I like how cool it is when you have friends that are into Siege and you can really strategize and win those matches. I'm
That
always a
that's
P.
that's very much where the fun comes from,
Yeah,
because you play by yourself with random people, and you're pretty much gonna not have a good time.
yes. And my thing is, I'm a PVE guy, and the PVE content in Siege was just a terrorist hunt that never got expanded on.
It was like practically non-existent.
Yeah, it was like it launched with that, and then they dove right in with the service element of the multiplayer and adding more of the classes and all, which was cool. Extinction being PVE speaks to me because I'm more of a PVE guy, and they said that you can actually play that game by yourself. So I'm excited for that. It's weird. It's still so weird for me that Rainbow Six has now evolved to such a degree that now you're fighting aliens, basically, which is
It's
so against what Tom
very
Clancy's
strange.
high tech thriller used to be. So it's like the name doesn't mean anything anymore. That's like my only thing. That took almost 30 minutes of that showcase just to give an example.
I
Like,
know.
yeah, yeah, just of them, and it's coming out in September, so that's cool. And they announced Rocksmith, like that they like
That that one's cool.
Rocksmith has existed before, and they're just making it more of a teaching tool now with Rocksmith Plus, and apparently it's gonna have an even more accessibility to more songs. I think that's nice for people that love guitar and want to learn and what it does, especially with Guitar Hero being dead.
mhm.
The big problem with Ubisoft was that they had two big announcements. One of them leaked because Nintendo leaked it. The Mario Rabbids Spark of Hope, which would have been a really cool surprise. Too bad that it got
I
leaked.
I messaged it to y'all. I don't know how Mario and Rabbids became a thing,
Yeah,
because Rabbids
are
was
the
the
most horrible
spin-off
thing. Like,
from the Rayman games.
mhm.
You would think it would be like a Mario and Rayman, but no, it's just the Rabbids. Forget Rayman. He's
Yeah,
out of here.
exactly.
It's
And the
just
rabbits has the ugliest looking things.
they're
They're
freaking
worse than the
disgusting.
minions. They're worse than the DreamWorks minions.
They look like Steve Buscemi mixed with a stuffed animal.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it's crazy because the mechanics look kind of cool. And I'm a sucker for a good XCOM game.
Hmm.
So the fact that this is actually involving way more people than the XCOM games really ever could almost surprises me. And
Hmm.
it's such a curveball that feels like it should not work. If I told you all of this that was going on paper, I feel like it just wouldn't work.
Hmm.
But it does.
Apparently, it was very successful. Like the first one, Mario
Yeah,
Rabbids, came
it
out in
crushed it.
2017, and apparently it really did, like it reviewed decently. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
like this amazing thing, but it must have sold really well for them to go back to the well almost 5 years later because it was announced for 2022.
Hmm.
I was excited to see it because after a Ubisoft conference that it was just updates and all stuff. Like I wish Far Cry 6 had not been revealed and they had saved it for now, even though they already revealed it last year. The thing is, Far Cry 6 was we were gonna play Far Cry 6 in February and it got delayed. Like that was
Oh, I
originally that's
forgot
one of the
about
games
that.
that so
Yeah.
so that's to its service. I wasn't as excited for Far Cry 6 back then. And now that they
Yeah.
show more, I'm like, okay, I'm more excited for that, but it's an old game.
Yeah.
Rainbow Six Extinction, it's not a new game. That was called Rainbow Six Quarantine. They obviously nixed the quarantine part because it hit
For
too close
obvious
to home
reasons.
for obvious reasons. So that
I
wasn't
don't think I
even
can hear the word quarantine without having PTSD flashbacks.
exactly.
So
So
Good on them.
That was just a 30-minute over explanation of a game that they announced back in 2019 with a different name.
Yeah.
So Mario Rabbids was like the big new thing, and unfortunately Nintendo leaked it by accident at the eShop. So that took the wind off its sails. But
We
at the
had
very
one more
least,
thing.
Ubisoft had the one more thing. And I had forgotten that they had been working on this game since like 2016, back when
Dude,
they
me
announced it.
too. I forget all about this IP entirely.
Yeah, even though this IP till this day is the most successful movie, like the most successful box office movie in history, Avatar, the blue people Avatar. So
Yeah.
the people that made the Division and the Division 2, they had announced they were making an Avatar game back in 2016.
Which now
That's
that I look back on it, it makes more sense. And
Mhm,
like I kind of remember hearing like, oh yeah, they're making
mhm.
an Avatar game. All right, cool, whatever.
Yeah,
Move on with my life.
because we're supposed to get the Avatar sequel like around 2017 and 2018, and we still haven't gotten it.
But now it's
That's
kind of
what's
funny because it might coincide once again with the next release. Imagine if that had gone
yeah. Disney,
horribly wrong.
since like absorbing Fox because Avatar was a Fox, they have scheduled Avatar for 2022. And the thing is that James Cameron already filmed Avatar 2 and 3 like 3 or 4 years ago. Those
Oh, is
movies are
that
in the
what
can.
happened? I know he
Yeah,
was working on them, but that's crazy.
yeah, he
Okay.
filmed them back to back, and those movies are in the can. I think the post
Wow.
processing is what's probably taking a long time because
It's true because I
the
mean,
effects of that movie are like insane.
I think that's what made it so big in the first place. You can kind of throw kind of anything in there,
Hmm.
and then it's all about the VFX. The for its time it was the 3D,
Yeah,
and now it's going to be something else.
yeah, and I wonder if people will care. Like, I don't think I've known a something in pop culture that numbers wise is so popular, yet no one even remembers what the name of the main character is. What's his name, Paul?
Jake Sully.
There you go. And I'll say that I
I
had to
do
see,
remember that
yeah,
much.
but I had to like look that up because Jeff Grubb, one of my favorite, like the journalist that has like nailed a lot of big things recently,
Yeah.
he made a mention of Jake Sully like during that conference. Like he knew that that was probably going to be announced
Mhm.
because he has sources. So I was like, that's what he meant with Jake Sully. So
Okay. Yeah.
this is going to be
Uh,
from what they announced, like this Avatar game. It's going to be an open world because it's Ubisoft. Being done in a new version of the Division engine, which by the way, for people to remember, they're also working on a Star Wars game. These people
which
are the
I
ones,
forgot about that too.
yeah, because they announced that earlier this year. But when everyone heard that they were working on the Star Wars game, everyone was like, wait, weren't they also working on Avatar?
Hmm.
So after that was announced, they were like, did the Avatar game got canned? Because we haven't heard that game in 5 years. What makes you excited of this game coming out is that now we know that because they put a 2022 date. Hopefully they get to they get to coincide with the movie because that would be good synergy, like in general. And if they get to release it, then we know that they already have freedom to go work on Star Wars, which is the game that I want from them. So, and they make good games. Like the Division and Division 2 are good shooters.
They
We
are
saw
solid. I
mechanics.
gotta give them credit where it's due.
The subject matter, the aesthetic is what doesn't work for me in those games, but to their core, they're good. And I feel the kind of mechanics that they do would work better in sci-fi. So Avatar, but for both Avatar and Star Wars, I feel Massive Entertainment are gonna be in a better wheelhouse there because they nailed the fundamentals with the Division. So that was Ubisoft, and like I mentioned, like they only had one thing and an hour of almost nothing. So again, another point of they should not show up if they don't have more. This could have just been a trailer that they dropped. So and other things that happened that day were Gearbox, which was probably the most horrible presentation I've ever seen in my life.
Really
That
glad I didn't get to see
yeah,
that.
it was mostly Randy Pitchford, the president of Gearbox, being at the Borderlands movie set and walking around and showing the actors and not
I
even showing
forgot they're
anything.
making a Borderlands movie.
Yeah, but
Golly.
directed by Eli Roth, and Kate Blanchett's gonna be Lilith, and Kevin Hart's gonna be Roland. It's hilarious, and that's where
That
they
still just
yeah.
kills me.
And Tiny Tina Wonderland was again shown there. This exact same trailer that was shown at Keely's thing. I was like,
Yeah.
I cannot believe. And then they were announcing this home runner thing. I don't even remember. They kept like peppering all the time. It's like, this is an old game. We're making a new one. And they put the exact same teaser like 4 times throughout the whole thing.
Oh no.
And then they announced that the highly successful Godfall is going to
Be
be
ported over to
ported over to
PS4, right?
PS4. Yeah, after they made a huge deal that that
And
game
they
could only
said it
work
was
in,
made for PS5.
yeah, and only PS5 can handle it. So
Oh
that
gosh.
were yeah, it's a that's still kicking around. And there was even a Cock Media 2 hour thing that was even on Friday that I don't even want to touch about because it was 2 hours of nothing.
Yeah.
But good thing Microsoft showed up,
We got some stuff to talk about from
and they
Microsoft.
showed up. Before
Holy
diving into the
crap.
big thing, I'll just say this: this is the best conference Microsoft has had in years. The kind of conference that I'm like, there were some problems with it because when I look back at it, they really didn't show much gameplay, which is a problem for them. But they packaged everything in a way that really makes you excited for the future of their platform,
I
and
would
even
say,
incentivizes you to join in into their
oh yeah.
platform.
I
Yeah.
would say they showed a lot of gameplay between all these.
Mhm.
I mean, we'll get into the details of it,
Yeah.
but I mean, Battlefield entirely,
Yeah. That was
that
all
was
gameplay, 12
gameplay.
minutes.
Stalker had some
Yeah.
gameplay.
Sea of
Back for
Thieves.
Blood was gameplay.
Mhm.
Uh, Atomic Heart technically, but I almost don't want
Yeah.
to call it. We'll talk about that. Replaced had gameplay.
Mhm.
Age of Empires, Flight Simulator.
Yeah. Flight Sim didn't have it. It was a more, but you can imagine what that thing is because it's
Yeah, I
Flight Sim.
mean,
Yeah.
watching the gameplay is
Yeah.
basically the
That.
gameplay, but also cinematic. It's weird. So Alejandro, out of these, what do you think is like really just hit you right in the soul out of this? Because there's so
From,
much we could talk about. We could spend
yes,
2 hours on just
exactly.
this.
Yeah. From because you already read just a bunch of the things that were interesting that they had 30 games,
I
27.
just like touched
Yes,
briefly just
exactly.
now.
We're not going to read all 30 of them. We just put the ones that like caught my eye there. And 27 of them are going to Game Pass. The value of Game Pass is undeniable at this
That
point.
that is
Like,
what I've got to give them the credit where it is due. Um, this genuinely makes me consider the idea of Game Pass. Like I've got my old Gen 1
mhm,
Xbox
Xbox One,
Xbox One. There we go.
the
Gosh.
same one that I have. Mhm.
Um yeah, and basically like I want to play some of this stuff, but if it's like $10 to buy this Game Pass, like that's a lot of
And here's the
crap
thing:
to
if
be able to have.
and you and even better, if you haven't subscribed at all to Game Pass, you can get in for $1 a month
Which I
before.
don't think I have. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you were interested, you could dive
My
in.
gosh.
Yeah.
I could.
So that's the thing. Like the Microsoft ecosystem right now has been like so absorbed into Game Pass, but its value is undeniable. And
Yeah,
while
at
their
this point.
exclusives are still not quite here yet, like for example Halo Infinite, which had a multiplayer sort of showcase at that conference before they made a deep dive the next day,
Mhm.
that reminded me that Halo is so much fun in multiplayer, and they're making it free to play, and they still
Sure.
just put a holiday 2021 release, which is what happened with Horizon a few weeks back. That they want to make it this year, but they're not feeling too confident to slap the date yet.
Yeah.
So Microsoft is still in a perpetual case of almost there. We're almost there. We're almost about to release some stuff,
Promise,
but it's
guys.
not. Yeah, we promise, but we have so much, and that's the thing for everyone that loves Game Pass. Just having some like basically like Stalker 2, that's gonna be a Game Pass game. Starfield, which ironically, this was so funny. Starfield trailer leaked and the date leaked. It was the first thing that opened the show, so that didn't screw them
Yeah.
like it screwed
And
Ubisoft with Mario Rabbids, which was like
I didn't
near the
have
end.
my pulse, or I didn't have my thumb on the pulse, so I didn't actually hear about the leak until after the fact when I was like, oh, okay, cool.
The Washington Post leaked it. That's what made
Oh
it
my
funny.
gosh.
Yeah, they had like an embargo thing, and I think it probably went earlier than it should because it had the
Huh.
exact same trailer that they showed, which
Yeah.
everyone thought it was CG. Apparently, it was all in engine of how that game would look.
Which that I don't know. Like
We have
that's
to see
something
next
that
year when they
doesn't
show the gameplay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on that yet because that could be in engine,
Mm-hmm.
but that's like the Unreal Engine 5 trailer in
Uh-huh.
engine where it's like that's all that's in there and being rendered, which
Mm-hmm.
of course it would make it look
Yeah.
gorgeous. So I mean to digress on it, but the concept is really cool. I mean, it's got that same almost like
1970s
Yeah, like
sci-fi,
a
like
Ridley
it's
Scott
really Scott.
style
Mhm.
to its ships, and I'm a sucker for that. I mean, we could talk about
Mhm.
how that aesthetic has been making a resurgence lately, and
Mhm.
I could not be happier about it.
Like Destiny 2, if you go to Europa, you see a lot of that aesthetic inside the labs and all that. So I'm
Which that
glad that
makes
that's
sense as
coming
well, because
back.
that's like older tech that's being found again. I mean, you've got your Loki show, which we're not even going to talk about. That's
Yes.
another day. Um, you've got, I mean, Control. The entire thing was about
Hmm.
like 1960s Americana, mid-century modern.
Uh-huh.
So many different things going on with
Yeah.
that. The
And they got a release
Dishonored
date.
people,
And
whoever
also
that is.
Starfield got a release date,
I
ironically.
know.
November 11th, 2022, which is funny that Todd Howard
I really love that November
loves
11th.
their that November 11th because Skyrim was 11/11/11.
Yep,
Now it's
I
11/11
remember that.
22. So because we're in a different generation, it could slip. Who knows? But Starfield has been in development since like 2015.
Yeah.
Just for the context, because this is what they've been kind of working on since Fallout 4, and the DLC was kind of done. Because Fallout 76 wasn't done by the same studio that was working on Starfield. That was another team that they kind of had some people help them over, but that wasn't the main BGS team. So they already put the date, which is funny. Starfield got a date, but not Halo Infinite. But um, Game Pass also in Game One, a big game like that, you're getting on Game Pass. Stalker
Mm,
2, a game that looks like Metro, like a
yeah.
Russian kind of like
Which
post-apocalyptic thing.
it's kind of funny how we're doing the it looks like Metro, and then Stalker came
Uh-huh.
first back on the PC, and probably
Mhm.
Metro was based on
Exactly. Yeah.
Stalker in a lot of ways.
And that was just a PC game, and so it's good that it's coming to console, and that's exclusive to them to
I
start. That's
agree.
a game that could come to PlayStation for what
That
the
was a
people that
game
lean there.
series I mean I was lost on, but I know a lot of people really love it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep my heart set for some of that.
Mhm.
Looking for Starfield the most.
Yes. And not only Stalker is in Game Pass, it's also like Back for Blood, like the Left 4 Dead game, is also gonna be on Game Pass. Like day one. Like
Brand new.
yeah, brand new. Like it's again like what Microsoft has been doing all this generation. And oh goddamn it, my rain. Can you hear the rain right now?
Only a little bit.
Yeah, so probably people notice that my light has gotten like darker suddenly, and now there's rain. There's rain happening. So let's hope this doesn't happen some disaster. Maybe it happened. Who knows? Like, but back to that. So yeah, a new game, kind of like they did with Outriders earlier this year. Like beginning on Game Pass. That's insane. Like other games that are on Game Pass, like 12 minutes. Like in indie games that have been like darlings, like in trade shows and all of that. Uh, coming to
Now,
Game
is
Pass.
the Diablo 2 remaster that's also
No,
Game Pass?
no.
Okay, that's because
They,
Battlefield, Diablo 2, and like one other
yes. Then the other one that wasn't on Game Pass is
Flight
Far Cry
Simulator?
6.
Oh,
Those
Far
were
Cry.
the three.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
So Diablo 2, Battlefield 2042, and Far Cry 6 were the third-party games in this 30 game showcase that doesn't have Game Pass day one
yeah.
thing.
Got it.
But they could come to Game Pass later. That's the thing. Like
Right.
everything is
It's not
possible. In
locked
fact,
down.
like since you mentioned Battlefield, like what do you think of Battlefield, Paul? Like getting to see that gameplay.
I will say like Battlefield 3 and 4 by far my favorites. Battlefield 1 to just like a slightly lesser extent, just because 4 combines all the stuff that I love from Battlefield: the destructibility, the massive scale, the vehicles, and just like the stupid level of like attachments and customizations you
Mm-hmm.
can have on your guns. And like the way you could just kind of make your style unique, because you had your 4 classes, but you could do so much within that because of the modern ability you have. And now that they're not even really bound by what exists in real life,
Mm-hmm.
because you saw they had grappling hooks, they had robots,
Wingsuits.
wingsuits, they had all sorts of crazy stuff. I think they had invisibility tech. So like you got so much opportunity for just crazy stuff going down. And I got into it after the 2042 game on PC had come and gone. So I missed out.
2142.
21
2142.
42, excuse me. Yes, you're right. Um, So like the original 2142 that was on there, I know some friends that played it. They absolutely adored it, just because of what you could do. And I think like the last expansion Battlefield 4 had incorporated a couple of things from Battlefield 2142,
Hmm.
namely the like hover tanks on like an Arctic mission map, excuse me, and like there was like a railgun, I think. But anyway, being able to come back to this because a lot of people I think have been spoiled from Battlefield 4 to the point that people will still go back and play that because I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, we love World War I, World War II, but the fact of the
Modern
matter
combat's more
is
fun.
you can't get some of those things out of that. And I mean, they tried flubbing that line a little bit by giving you a couple things like different scopes that didn't actually exist or using experimental weaponry. I get it. Like you got to make things up a little bit if you're going to make a shooter that's accessible for people and not like 100%
Hmm.
accurate. So this return to form is really interesting to me. The crisis style, like look at your gun and switch things around as
Hmm.
you want, fantastic. Um, I think just being able to do stuff on the fly like that is really gonna honestly, I feel like people are going to try breaking that immediately by
Hmm.
like getting into part of a gunfight and then switching your gun out. I mean, maybe not switching the whole gun, but maybe you can do something to just cheat the system, I'm sure. But I, to digress, I'm looking forward to it. I love like those concept of rush and the grand operations that I think they call it breakthrough in some
Hmm.
versions. Um, I'm gonna be playing it day one. All my friends are gonna be on it for sure.
Yeah,
I'm
and
looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too, but I'm also looking forward to it for other reasons. One, this is a multiplayer only Battlefield game. The
That's
first one since the before Bad Company days, when every Battlefield game that they were putting out was just multiplayer only. To play devil's advocate,
I
Battlefield
would
camp.
almost say like they haven't really had a real single player since four. I would argue even the
Yeah,
first even the Battlefield one. They did have like little tiny segments, and it was like
the
four or five
vignettes, the
missions.
vignettes. Mhm.
I'll give them that.
It was clever.
Battlefield 5 definitely did not, and they
Yeah,
called it that. I wouldn't.
it worked. It didn't work in five like it worked in one.
It
And
was just like a five. It was against AI basically with like a tiny little, hey, here's your character and what's going on, but then it played out almost like a Battlefield multiplayer match.
yes,
Um, and I wasn't really about that.
yeah. My thing with that is like Battlefield campaigns. To me, the only good ones were the Bad Company ones because they were unique and played to the Battlefield sandbox. Battlefield 3 and 4 were like campaigns completely inspired by what Call of Duty was doing. And I
Yeah,
thought, well, we have to try to be Call of Duty, but you can't be Call of Duty because no one does Call of Duty like Call of Duty does. And they do multiplayer different than Call of Duty, and that's what their strengths are.
yeah.
The big problem is Battlefield 2042 is launching as a multiplayer only $70 game if you want to play the game at its very best
On the
with
PS5,
on the
by the
PS5
way,
and Xbox Series
Xbox.
X. So I wonder if the same splendor is gonna show up in current gen because that game's gonna be $60. The problem is it's launching in the same year where its competition, Call of Duty, whatever it is gonna have a campaign, it's gonna have multiplayer, it's gonna have zombies, another multiplayer competition in Halo Infinite is launching with a campaign that's on Game Pass,
That is true. Yeah.
and its multiplayer is free to play, so you don't even need Game Pass for that. So
It's
and they changed things in Xbox side because before you needed to pay Xbox Live to play a free to play game. They took that out earlier this year.
mm,
So now the Halo multiplayer is free on PC and Xbox.
holy.
And so
That's
and
gonna
like
take a lot of kids away from the Fortnite craze.
yeah, and especially because eventually there's a specific time period where people can have enough of same thing, and then if something looks cool and it's gonna be free, they might try that out. And I think Halo will work that way by going for the free to play route and its arena and bringing arena shooters to me are like really good competitive grounds for
Yeah.
weird things happening. And I fear for Battlefield because this Battlefield actually looks really good. Like, just I seen that tornado wreck that thing in the trailer that they showed
Mhm.
in the middle of, while you're in the middle of combat, and knowing that it's a 128 player match. Obviously, you get Warzone that it's like 150, but that's a battle royale that people, once they die, they're out. This is like a constant pandemonium of 128 people. So will that be enough for some people? Will that help swallow the fact that it's a $70 multiplayer only game? Which, to be fair, EA is having their own conference completely away from E3 at the end of July, their EA Play. They say they have more to show for Battlefield 2042, but it's not a campaign, it's not a battle royale, and it's not a traditional co-op thing. But apparently, they're gonna have some other things. They have time to make the case. As of right now, it's a big yikes in comparison. Like, it's value proposition in comparison to what's going to compete with them around that
It
time.
is definitely like the look of the character before they climb the mountain. It's like, oh man, that is going to be a very difficult and steep climb,
Yeah.
because like it's not impossible. They could totally crack it, but they have everything stacked against them between, like you said, the next Call of Duty, the current Call of Duty, and Warzone, all that, the Halo, everything else that's going to be coming out between now and then. It's going to be difficult, and that's what my biggest concern is. Not only the I guess borderline high jumping in point for price wise, but also the crossplay problems. Like I think we briefly mentioned, is
Mm-hmm.
if the PS4 and Xbox One versions are only allowing for 32v32,
Mm-hmm.
that means it is going to be only PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC players on those
Servers. Mm-hmm.
64v64, which we've already established that PC has that inherent
Advantage.
advantage, and that can be very difficult for some people. And then if they choose to shut that down, which as an option, we've seen that like PC gets really messed up on like Warzone and stuff because so many console players will turn that off, and then PC doesn't have anybody to play with. And even then, on the next gen consoles, we've seen what happens to games with very large lobbies. Um, when you make a game that requires that many people, it feels extremely empty and
Mm-hmm.
difficult to navigate when you don't have a full match lined up.
I
I
agree.
tried going back to like Battlefield 1, even
I agree.
Battlefield 5. If you don't play the right game type,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to
It's
be
empty.
playing against maybe 20 people max.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fun to mess with. You run for about a minute to 5 minutes and then somebody snipes you. And
Yes.
then you process
I
to
would
start it
say
over.
the existence of Game Pass itself, it's probably also doing more hurt to Battlefield than they probably intend to, because of the expectation of, and also the barrage of free to play multiplayer games nowadays. Like, it's warping the sense of value that it's interesting to me that EA, that it's planning on doing seasons, paid battle passes, and all that. If you're gonna do that, you could have easily made this a $40 game if you're so interested in selling something, or go free to play and make your money through cosmetic microtransactions, your battle passes, season passes, all of that. All these other people are making money that way. They're making money that way through Apex. Why this? For a game that looks amazing, like Battlefield 2042. I'm not a PvP guy, and I'm tempted. Like, I'm actually tempted to like suck it up and experience it that way. So, but yeah, so that was impressive from the Microsoft show, but I'm just concerned for its future prospects, just because of what the competition is doing around it from a value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
So then other quick things that the Microsoft showcase that really intrigued me, like Plague Tale. The Plague Tale is an amazing game. Like the first one is so good.
Having just recently played it through it myself, and I think we might have touched on it very briefly, but I loved the first game. It had a lot of heart and soul, more so than I thought. I thought it was like 100% like just linear, and that what you got was all you got. but it had almost like a Last of Us 2 style crafting system.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work with stuff like that. You got to change things around with how you worked. It had a very beautiful and realistic style to it, and then
Mm-hmm.
it kind of like took a crazy fantasy shift because I thought it was like trying to be very historically accurate to the time, and then I realized, oh no, we're just using that as the jumping off point, and then we are going to get crazy with it,
Mm-hmm.
with like this Bloodborne style rat controlling magic. Um, and now that they're going even further into that concept, I'm fully sold on it for sure. And then I saw like Amicia had like a crossbow now, so she's getting more competent.
And tornado rats, like
And tornado rat. I mean, that was
yeah.
actually one of the things that happened at the end of the first game
Mm-hmm.
was, if you remember, they had the crazy like rat versus rat tornado
Mm-hmm.
um, fight between, was it Hugo and like the Pope of that
Mm-hmm.
world, and that was just bonkers to look at and watch happen. But
Yes. But yeah, it's like I'm very interested because that first game was such a surprise 2 years ago, and available. The first one is still available on Game Pass for people that have an Xbox and want to
yeah,
try it. And Atomic Heart, like another Game Pass game that looks like Bioshock, like Outer Worlds 2 that only had a trailer, but because of and the first game had so much promise, it kind of like you were mentioning, it's excited, but they need to like get a balance right between like its RPGness and its action side.
hmm
Like now they have more backing, they have more money, they have the Microsoft money. The first
yeah,
one was made on a shoestring budget, and they wanted to prove that they could make an RPG with not a massive budget. And I think for what they were attempting to, even if it was in the smaller side, they succeeded. But now they have the corporation backing, and it's going to be on Game Pass also, just like the first game.
yeah.
Age of Empires 4. If you're a fan of Age of Empires, that's also a Game Pass game. Flight Sim, that looks so amazing. Like, and they're getting Top Gun,
It's
like a Top
all
Gun expansion for
vibes.
free. Just hearing the song and seeing Maverick, like, and just thinking about it, just thinking about flying around with the Top Gun music, chills. Yeah.
I love everything that they do with that. Even though like Flight Simulator very quickly got away from me as like a series that I follow.
Mhm.
I did grow up on flight simulators, all of like the really trash bootleg ones from the
Uh-huh.
early 2000s. I loved having a flight stick in my hands.
Yes. And this is the daddy. And this is the
Yeah,
daddy.
my cousin grew me up on like X-wing versus Tie Fighter and Rogue Squadron and all that stuff. So this
Oh,
is
Rock
like,
Squadron was my favorite.
we're still looking for one of those
Yeah.
one day. But anyway,
Forza Horizon 5. If you like for people that like arcadey racers, Forza Horizon's like can be topped in its physics and in its feel.
I
And
love
that one, it's now moving to Mexico. I made the joke within us that will you be able to go to the U.S. border and see the incomplete wall? But
it would be great having a crossover between Forza Horizon and Far Cry now.
yes, so and then their conference ended with the announcement for the new
Arcane Studios.
Arcane studio game, and this one specifically is Arcane Austin, the guys that made Prey. And now,
You know what? That makes sense. Yeah.
yes, so Prey came out in 2017. It's been 5 years. They had put the summer 2022 release. It obviously tentative to be delayed, but a new Arcane game. I love Arcane. Like you love Dishonored Arcane.
Oh yeah.
Um, I thought Prey was fun. Like it had an interest. It was an interesting shooter to
I
play.
played a very tiny amount of it, and I wasn't
Yeah, the beginning is
vibing as
the
much.
beginning doesn't grab you. That game. That's why I say it's interesting because it eventually hooks you, but the beginning is tough.
Okay, that
So
makes sense then.
So yeah, so it's but and they reemphasize after months of them being wishy-washy about their Bethesda acquisition, what it meant for their platform. They really drove it home. Xbox exclusive. Not this is for platforms that are gonna have the Game Pass in it. It's like just say it. Swing that big D around and be like say it. It's an Xbox
They,
exclusive. That's why you paid
I gotta give
7.5
them
billion.
credit
Yeah,
because it's like, you know what? That's exactly why, and they should use what they have
yeah.
available for that. It's a shame that we're going to be missing out on so many of these, or at least waiting for a very long time before they show up.
Mhm.
The ones that don't automatically drop on everything,
Yeah,
obviously.
but the reality is that exclusive is what sells you on the machine. So by having that, they're like making their case. And you have mentioned that one thing that holds you back from like trying to get everything is because you could get out of control and just purchase so much, and you want to like narrow down things.
Yeah.
The interesting Trojan horse of like what Xbox is doing is that they acknowledge the dominance that PlayStation has. Obviously, like a lot of people want a PS5. It's like that thing is in high demand, but they're positioning themselves that in such a way that Xbox fans can be feasting right now, like with what they're delivering to them. And if anyone's interested, the entry point to get to play a bunch of these things can be so low. Like you could go the Series S route. That thing is still that's the 1080p version of the next gen thing. If all you care about is like really playing those games, like that's a very cheap solution, and you can get Game Pass on it. And they even mentioned how they want to bring Game Pass to more services, like even to try to put it on TVs, because they're like been working on improving latency in those things. They're making a great ecosystem, and I feel like that creates an exciting future. And for me, the first time that in a while that you could justify owning both machines without breaking the bank. Also, you could literally just get an Xbox and never buy a game.
Yeah.
And you'll be fine because the cost is so cheap. And
What
like
a crazy world we live in where
yeah,
you can do that.
and even better, like and then if you're someone that is so adamant that you like owning your things instead of like renting them or just play them while they're available, their discount system of games that are about to go out, it's so amazing. And they don't just take room, they just don't remove games out of the blue, be like in the next, oh, this is gonna, no, they give you ahead of time, like almost a months ahead time. They're like, hey, just so you know, we're gonna remove this, so if you're interested, here's the discount if you want to keep playing it. They're not doing the Netflix thing that by the end of the month you know what's gonna be ganked.
Right.
So good stuff from Microsoft. I am liking for Microsoft. I've been wanting Microsoft to feel more competitive in a way that can make PlayStation like wither at its heels a little bit, or at least like it could shake things up for them to be better. So this is the start. At the same time, we're still missing the most important part, which is these games have to release. But that's happening. That's gonna happen. There were so many games that were not even in the showcase. Hellblade 2 about, which unfortunately we got the recent news that they're rebooting development. That may be a 2024 game, but it's something to look forward to in the future from them. Everwild, yeah, Everwild's the one. Yeah, about is the Skyrim looking Obsidian game. Yeah, Everwild is the rare game that got rebooted. The next years, like whatever Compulsion is Fable, that wasn't even here, and they still had a lot. They still have big show. So props to Microsoft because they're the only ones that showed up to fight, other than the other one. Then unfortunately,
we have to go up through a low point, very slightly.
The lowest of the low points. Oh, why Square? Square probably should have gone the first day, not follow up what we got from Microsoft. Like, I'll just say this: like, only two things popped for me there: Guardians of the Galaxy game, which took the majority of the beginning of that show.
I'll give them that.
Yeah, it was like there was rumors that Eidos Montreal, the guys that that made Deus Ex, that made Thief, the modern Thief, they were gonna do this Guardians of the Galaxy game. That rumor happened back in 2016. So it's been a while. I'm glad it's finally out. I'm glad that it's a single player game. They're not gonna, because I would say this, like the Avengers game, it's a great single player game trapped in the really unfortunate games as a service hook. And now they're trying to keep Avengers alive. Like they had an expansion, War for Wakanda, that they detail a little bit more, that's coming out in August. My birthday. So coming out in August, like that's more content, and their story content is good. Everything games as a service about it is not good. Other than that, like the Square Enix, man, like the hot piece that was Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the way they put it, to then just put it on mobile and Steam and sell each game individually a piece. The onslaught of mobile games, a new Nier game that's going to be mobile. reminding us the horrible Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale that's on mobile. Like weird Final Fantasy,
Crossovers.
yeah, some weird crossovers that are gonna be in mobile. The what the heck happened to Babylon Fall? The like
I don't even know where to begin.
hey,
Babylon
you saw
Fall,
the trailer that I put you right, the one they showed in 2019,
the
like
one
when
that
that.
like I actually didn't rewatch it because I remember vaguely like what was going on.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, this is kind of cool looking. I'm curious what's gonna
It's
go
a
down.
it's a platinum game. It looked
Yeah.
like back then. It actually looked like a platinum game, a quick action platinum game.
And now it is trapped within the Nintendo 64 watercolor effect.
Ooh. You see the
Um,
image I posted of like
yeah,
it was
zooming in, it just looked smudgy. It looks like a weird PS2 game.
yeah.
Um, that was like upscaled somehow. The aesthetic looked weird. With like the armor
Service game.
weapons.
They made it a service game. Like, why would you do that to a platinum game?
Service.
Like, why? Like, I don't get it. Like, you like if you're gonna work with platinum, let platinum be platinum. Why?
It's
Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I was so excited for it because thankfully, like at the PC gaming show, one game actually looked like a platinum game that wasn't made by Platinum, Soulstice.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
I had that written down in my whole category. That was like hidden within the depths of the PC game show.
mhm. And it's
But
coming to
that's gonna
consoles.
be,
Yeah,
yeah, it's PS5, Xbox Series X. And
that's
it
what I
looks
wanted from
fantastic.
Babylon Fall. That's what I wanted from it. That was what I was expecting. And now, like, they destroyed the art style. They're making it a service game that's not gonna last. Let's just call it like that because we're finally at the point where service games, like, the bottom has finally fallen. That no
Yeah.
one will be able to
Unless you
play all of them.
established yourself, I don't think service games are really going to be able to pull themselves together.
Yeah,
Because we've seen at this point, like you'd almost call them like successes here and there with big ol' air quotes, but besides something like Destiny and Division and anything made in China, I guess,
mhm.
you really can't make a service game and make it last for more than a year, it
Yeah.
seems.
The sweet spot for anyone launching these kind of games was 2014 to 2017 to be established and to keep going. Trying
Right.
to make a new one this far out is like people are already too established in what they play now. It's a fool's errand doing a service game. That's why that Guardians of the Galaxy game was so refreshing to me. It had some problems. It looked a little janky. Star Lord looked like a jerk, but the dialogue
Maybe
was on
that's the
point.
point, I
Yeah,
guess, but I
probably. Yeah,
agree. He looked a
yes.
little weird.
But
Everyone
the
else
rest of
looked
them, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, Drax,
Um,
Groot, like
Straight out of the
Rocket.
comic books.
Yeah, the tone was great. Like I love the music cues, right? Like in some of the combat and the
Yeah,
music choices was like I'm glad that they're keeping the inspiration that James Gunn brought into when he made those Guardians movies, even though this is not an MCU game.
yeah.
Like at the very least, they didn't shoehorn in a service element to that game. So that makes the Babylon Fall thing like such a hubris like thing of why make that to that game. And unfortunately, that wasn't even the worst part about the Square Enix thing. They saved the worst for last.
Alejandro, I'm going to ask you to sit down for a second.
Yeah.
Um, Square Enix. I love you. I care deeply about you. But what in the hell is Strangers of Paradise?
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize how big of a hyped up thing this was. That people knew that it was going to be a
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy. Oh, it's set in the Final Fantasy One universe,
Mm-hmm.
origin to like that whole world, and everyone expected something similar to the art style of Final Fantasy One. What we got was Tetsuya Nomura's take on Luxord from Kingdom Hearts, and then dressed him in what's hot for spring 2021, um, namely a form-fitting, nice little partially button-down shirt and some jeans, and then just stapled a giant sword to his back and called it a day. His two buddies are only that way worse, looking like custom characters right out of a free username setup of Final Fantasy 14. And I don't, just looking at it from the beginning blows my mind. It looks like a PS3 game that was put into the PS5 era. It there was like just black, gray, some red here and there. Um,
Much.
the
Just
same
much.
line delivered in different ways. I want to kill chaos. I'm here to kill chaos. It's chaos that I'm after. Hey, look,
Yeah.
it's your buddy Garland. No, I am chaos.
Okay.
I'm going to kill chaos. Oh, all right. We're really mixing it up today. Every time he ended a villain, it was literally like a clip show of him doing different similar finishers to those enemies. And it was like, get destroyed or whatever he was saying, and his many yells like a Gears of War character. Um, it genuinely blew my mind how somebody can still consider that to be exactly what they're looking for these days.
It
And
was befuddling. Like, it's just thinking how much you probably hated watching it, like, fill my heart, like, fill my soul. Just like knowing
yeah,
what an insult that thing was. That it's borderline astonishing that they could have missed the mark that much. Or like what something in paper sounded really cool. Oh, a Final Fantasy version of Neo, which is already kind of like a Souls-like thing. That
yeah,
would be interesting to see in the Final Fantasy universe. But they approached it in the worst way possible, in the most meme-worthy way possible. And to add insult to injury, they're like, "Don't worry, we'll convince you. We're shipping a demo the same day for you to try it for
yep.
yourself."
What
And the
happened?
demo's corrupted. The demo's corrupted.
Yes,
And
and
it's still not working from what I understand, unless
uh,
it finally works. Like, it's corrupted.
I wonder if Square Enix even wants to continue on with the project, considering I don't think I've seen. I might have seen one person on YouTube across watching reactions to it that was actually like, I'll play this. This is cool. But once again, I feel like that's only because they didn't see Soulstice come out as well, which scratched the same itch,
Mhm.
but in its own way, and actually looks somewhat cool and unique. Where this just, it really does not match. It looks like somebody made their own character out of Saints Row 4 and decided to put them in a hyper serious situation. It looks like the crossover that you, when you go to the Toy Story world in Kingdom Hearts 3 and it played the hyper edgy fake Final Fantasy 15. It looked like that, but even more devoid of color and no sort of characters whatsoever.
And I think we can blame this all on Nomura. Just the fact because the character design was attributed to him. He's not the director of this thing. But just the fact that the design was attributed to him says everything we need to know about that man right now. And like what's in his heart currently. And
I am currently working on like art for a game from the designing aspect of it, and just the stuff that like he breaks every rule in the book while he's doing this. And it's not that, oh, look at him breaking ground and making new amazing designs by not adhering to the rules of character design. It is so atrocious what he's doing with that. And
yes.
I still have a decent amount of respect for this guy as a professional because of how far he's come and all the stuff he has done
Final
over the
Fantasy
years.
VII Remake, which he
Yeah,
directed,
I mean,
the capacity, like,
he has the capacity for amazing stuff, and he just has also the capacity for extremely
and
dumb
to be
stuff.
and to be fair, like some of the dumbest stuff from Final Fantasy VII Remake that was like Kingdom Hearts S near the end.
That was him.
That was him. So he has a style to him.
Yeah.
But Strangers of Paradise is the meme of E3, and I wouldn't take it any other way. Like, other than Capcom showing up with nothing. But like Square Enix was like, if someone put it as like even having the lowest possible expectations, like Square Enix was able to provide colossal levels of
Somehow.
disappointment, and not much worse to bear than following that strong Microsoft showing. And million showcases happened. Verizon apparently did something there. I didn't even care.
Talked about
Take
like 5G
yeah,
or something.
yeah. Take Two Interactive did their diversity panel. That was a pile of nothing.
They
Um,
did say, I think beforehand, they were
yeah,
like, "Hey, listen, guys, we're not announcing or showing any gameplay. We're just doing something
yeah.
else."
They
But
just took a bunch of space for that for
I feel
nothing.
like that's
So
kind of weird to put that in the middle of
mhm,
E3 and then be
yeah.
like, "Oh, why are you acting disappointed? We
Hmm.
said what we were doing." But it's like,
Yes.
guys, you're in the middle of like the biggest
Biggest.
video game showcase of the whole year. What are
Yes.
you doing?
Exactly.
Anyway,
And then to finish it off, because E3 needed to go out on a strong note,
thank
and
God.
it happened
Thank
this
God.
it happened the same way in 2019. It happened the same way right now. Nintendo delivered what one of their better directs in so long that gave me so much I want to play. Finally, my Switch will finally be undusted from just being a Mario machine that I had it for a while, even though like I love Mario. I mean, look at this case.
Beautiful.
It's I will say I'll just get one tiny bit of disappointment out of the way. I'll still yearning to hear that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are gonna be in this machine, and even Ocarina.
Yeah.
Like almost everything else, it's close to being there or almost there. I mean, obviously they mentioned Skyward Sword again. That's coming out next month. That's so
Yeah.
crazy that in a month we're gonna get Skyward Sword again. Um, Other than that, like Metroid Dread, Metroid's back. 2D
That
Metroid is back.
that looked
I,
really solid. I'll give him that.
I
It,
had
it was
chills,
I
chills.
I kept expecting them to pull the rug out from under us to be like, "Oh, it's a new little spin-off." So like the what was it, the 3DS Metroid
Like,
like soccer thing or whatever?
mhm.
It was like
I
a
think they made
squad
Samus
shooter.
Return. I think it was Metroid Samus
No,
Return in
that was
3DS.
good.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that one that was like it was a different game and they just slapped the Metroid title on it.
Federation Forces. Metroid
Federation
Federation
Force,
Forces. Yeah.
yes. Um, horrendous.
Yeah.
I don't think that should have
Such a
even
bad
had
game.
the
Yeah.
name
Bad game.
Metroid on it, but this looked like a full-on return to form.
And
The
you know what made me
full size. What?
pop more? It's a
What?
sequel to Metroid Fusion, my favorite Metroid of all time. The
Now
Game
I'm
Boy
gonna need to
Advance.
pick
The
your brain on that one day on like the exact details because I'm so much of a newcomer comparatively
uh-huh.
to I'd say most other Metroid fans
So
entirely.
so Metroid, like 2D Metroid starts with the NES one, which is not very good, I would say. Maybe it was good at the time, but it's just so rough to go back to.
Yeah,
Then there's Super Metroid, the
which I hear
SNES
that's like
one.
the big
That's
one.
like top tier. Metroid Fusion came out the same year that Metroid Prime came out in 2002 in GameCube.
Okay.
And Metroid Fusion was the direct sequel to Super Metroid. Same style, same 2D style, and all that. Samus with her blue skin because she was infected by a virus. They had to like build a new suit for her to deal with like a Metroid virus that gives you the power ups and all that. She still wears like that kind of blue suit, as you can see. That's straight from
Yeah.
Metroid Fusion. So that's a sequel to that from a game that came out in 2002. And here's what's also funny: the name Metroid Dread has been floating around since like 2005 as
Saw the
like it,
article you posted.
yeah, as a potential like sequel to them. And the last time anyone reported about it was in 2007, around the time Metroid Prime 3 Corruption came out on Wii. So man, they held this name for so long, and now they like pulled the trigger and put it now, where hunger for anything Metroid is at its highest. I think Nintendo read the tea leaves right for when to put this, because everyone has been screaming wanting a 2D Metroid for a while, and the 3DS Metroid Samus Return from 2017 that was surprise announced was like very well received. That I was shocked that they didn't follow it up quicker, but it's now that like they had on Switch. It's like that's I'm gonna get so much use of my Switch this October
It
when
looked
that game comes out.
very polished too. I will say I'm not like fully sold on Samus's outfit in this one.
Mhm.
I just keep thinking Iron Patriot from Iron Man 3, a very like patriotic look to
Mhm.
him. To her
Yeah,
technically.
I'm sold
But
just because what it's supposed to be a follow up to, which is
yeah,
Metroid
and
Fusion.
I'm
So
very interested in all that because they said I don't know if you got to watch any of that deep dive. They were talking about Metroid Prime, I mean Prime, Dread right after the showcase, and it
in the
was like the guy
treehouse.
that's directing it and all that stuff, and he was saying how if you like you said it was a sequel to Fusion, but if you didn't play Fusion, there's like a catch you up video like
Hmm.
cinematic to
Man.
get you understanding like what happened, and it had like a clip show of like the blue attaching itself to Samus
Hmm.
and how it's like now the suit's kind of built around it.
Yeah.
And how he said like, yeah, we've been trying to use it and then we lost our opportunity and then they just didn't give us a chance for all these years and now we finally got the chance to go back to it.
Hmm.
And I was like, dude, I can only imagine the persistence this guy had to make it through all this time with that Metroid dread in his head um, this whole time
Hmm.
to
Exactly.
finally.
And I'm just glad Metroid is back because Metroid has never been the Nintendo's biggest seller. To be fair, Zelda wasn't either, and Breath of the Wild blew in
That
sales. So
was
maybe
crazy.
the hardware takes into account like how popular a machine is and if something can sell, because apparently everything is selling on Switch. So I think this Metroid is gonna have a good tail to it.
Mm.
Uh, this gets us closer to Metroid Prime 4, which was mentioned.
They did say
That
they were still working on it, so I was
Yeah,
like, hey,
that game was announced in 2017, but in 2019 they announced they were restarting development. So that game ran into some trouble, but they gave it back to Retro Studios. That's what was
oh, I
funny,
remember that.
because
Yeah,
Retro wasn't working. The Retro Studios, the guys that made the Prime trilogy,
they like
were not working
outsourced.
on that. So someone else was working on Metroid Prime 4, and apparently it reminds me of what happened to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Another developer was doing, and they had to take it in house halfway
Because they
through.
didn't like it.
So Nintendo did the same thing with Metroid, but this at the very least tells us that Nintendo it's at least a little serious with Metroid. There were rumors the Prime trilogy was gonna make its way to Switch. That still hasn't happened, but now I'm not too worried that it may not happen because they're going to this extent to bringing a 2D Metroid to the Switch. So Metroid Dread is the most excited I've been for a game out of E3. Like that's my. If you have to tell me like what's the most exciting game you like came out of this 5 days, it's that one
I
because
would
I'm.
say that's like my second, with a
Mhm.
couple honorable mentions being the
Mhm.
other two that we have listed
Yeah,
here. WarioWare. I was never a big WarioWare person, but I know there's a lot of people that just swear
they were
by it.
so fun. They were like
Um,
great time killers on like the
it's stupid
DS.
fun.
Yeah.
Like, and the Wii U was the last one. I see the when I
Mhm.
was working for GameStop, I would see that intro video like all the time
Mhm.
for it because they had a Wii U demo kit over there,
Yeah.
and I was like, this looks fun. This looks ridiculous, and I would enjoy myself if like a friend broke it out at a party, but
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna like do it
Mario
myself.
Party Superstars,
Now
another one that
that
yeah, that made me pop because I enjoyed Super Mario Party, the one that came out in 2018,
mm.
but it felt a little threadbare compared to what I expect from Mario Party.
There
But
was
I have
something weird going on with that Super
yeah,
Mario Party.
they added more boards. Like our friend PJ, he streamed. I saw him stream one time. Like he was playing Mario Party with a couple of his friends, and
Yeah,
I saw boards that were not there back in the back when I played that game.
that's good that they're
So
adding it at least.
and this one is like again like if there's something Nintendo has is like being able to talk at the nostalgia of people, and I have such great nostalgia for the Mario Party 1 through 8 from the N64 to GameCube era. By the time we got to the Wii U era, I didn't play those. So the my nostalgia goggles are not for there, and I saw boards that reminded me of the old Mario parties. They're gonna add the better. They say they're gonna add the best mini games from like the entire series and put it all together. I feel this is
That's
a.
what people have been asking for a very long time. A game of
Mhm.
just the I mean, obviously it's more than that, but like even if they said just a game of all the best mini games from all the previous Mario parties.
There was a 3DS games that was just mini games from Mario Party that
I
was not
remember
good.
that,
That was
but
not good.
right.
So at the very least, this one is like bringing back the boards and also mixing it with that and online play. Online
That
play
is what
wasn't
I'm
the.
probably the most
So
excited
here's the
about.
thing, like Super Mario Party had online play, but it feels like this one they're gonna make more of an effort to, which for
Yeah.
Nintendo says a lot because they're online. Anything online for Nintendo, it's absolute trash.
So
So
difficult. It's like getting a baby to try something new. They are just not interested at all in trying things. So the fact that they're like, "Hey, we're gonna do some online play for this new Mario Party game, and
I'll
we're gonna
give it to them.
actually put some
And
work
that,
on
yeah, and that's why I'm like, I'll give it to them. Okay, you emphasize that I'm hoping you do some work,
it."
because like the last time I dabbled into online with the Switch was Super Mario Party 2. I mean, Super Mario Maker 2, sorry. And I was I had a brain fart there. But Super Mario Maker 2, like I tried to do the online COD thing and it was horrendous. The lag was unbearable.
Ugh.
So I hope here's hoping. And obviously probably the big headline for this one, other than like other quick things like Super Monkey Ball's coming back. That's so cool
Yeah,
because
that's wild.
yeah, that's so wild.
Devolver Digital, everything that they basically talked about looks
Yeah.
like a sleeper hit.
Shin Megami
Um,
Tensei 5 has
that's
finally a
going to be
release.
a big
Like,
one. A lot
did
of
they
people.
release it or not? I don't even remember now. It was so
I definitely don't think they had gameplay, and this is the first time we actually saw that in action. I mean, obviously, being the same vague universe as Persona, people are going to see some similarities.
mhm.
I feel like it's a step back with the UI, but
Yeah. Here's
uh,
what's funny: Shin Megami Tensei came first before
I know
Persona. Like Persona
Persona
was the
was like
spin-off,
a spin-off,
but
but
Persona became bigger than Shin
right.
Megami Tensei.
um it's that thing where like everyone's gonna go, oh hey, they're just using all the monsters from Persona,
Uh-huh.
but the
But
same
no,
thing,
okay.
like we were showing the Danganronpa
They're gonna, and people thinking that
re-releases, and everyone said that's just Among Us
yeah, that tells
with
you where
anime characters.
there's way too many young people nowadays that they don't know their history. So that makes me cringe to my soul. But it makes me feel cooler that we know more. We're
Yeah,
not that ignorant.
that's just nice.
But then the big one, the big headliner, the
Big one was
sequel to Breath of the Wild.
officially named the sequel to Breath of the Wild,
That
giving me similar vibes as, oh my gosh, was it the artist formerly known as Prince? Anyway, yes, Breath of the Wild 2. We got some gameplay of it. We got some cinematics. Ganondorf is once again back in the fray of things.
which of
Um,
course,
yeah, of course he is. We've got Zelda immediately falling and probably getting captured somehow.
because of course.
We have Link with no ponytail, just Thor hair in it. We've got his
Weird
Avatar
hand.
season 3, his weird hand that instead of like the strange iPad,
Uh-huh.
I guess it's attached to his hand now, and he gets to use his powers through that. We
And
saw
also flying in the sky that are looking a lot like Skyward Sword, which would explain why they're
flying,
re-releasing.
falling.
Yeah,
Um,
they're re-releasing
I
Skyward Sword.
I know that is kind of strange. I mean, that's probably one reason why they chose that one over some of the others, I would think. Um, but it looks amazing as always. Frankly, it looks pretty much similar to the way it was. So at least our fears are not confirmed
Mhm.
of it being relegated to whatever the Switch Pro, which was completely absent.
Yeah,
Um,
and they had said, which as a quick follow up to that,
they
like
did.
they are like the Switch Pro didn't get announced. Bloomberg still stands by its report that things may have shifted, but this was always going to be a software showcase. So they delivered on that. Like they've never made promises they were going to show a new machine in this. It was just going to be the games. A bunch of them coming out this year. Obviously, Breath of the Wild, this sequel to Breath of the Wild. Let's just call it Breath of the Wild 2 until they put a different name. Um, they what you call it? Oh, and here starts the noises again. Uh, it's interesting that they want to synergize so much with Skyward Sword. I feel like Onuma maybe wants to like redeem that game in a way, or like have it be a different have a different perspective from gamers by having so many elements from it in this one. Uh, Keeping a lot of the May Breath of the Wild, but at the same time, make enough things that make it different that it actually feels like a sequel to it.
I would say, yeah, I absolutely agree because that was my, as we established before we started recording, my biggest concern was, okay, how are they going to have this whole map that we've already extensively searched and make it new, and that being, well, rip parts of it up into the sky and give you
Hmm.
the ability to traverse the sky a little bit
Yeah.
more, and bam, you got it. That's going to open up entire underground areas for the bottom area. The
Some things
surface though,
looked like, it felt like, just watching a bunch of stuff, it felt like we were seeing a bunch of dungeon mechanics also
yeah,
happening there.
that
And it
was
felt like
very
there was more variety. And that's again like a big thing that I was mentioning, that everything that Breath of the Wild excelled at was not being a Zelda game. And then trying to be a Zelda game is where it showed a little bit more limit of its limits, because of the way it approached things for the sake of its freedom, like giving all the tools right out of the gate. This is all you're gonna use. So it missed out on that kind of sense of progression that defines Zelda. Which again, this was gonna be a reworking, but I like that in myself. I hope this means that they're keeping the spirit of Breath of the Wild while adding that sense of progression that's gonna make things better and improve. And please, Nintendo, please, no weapon breaking,
at
please,
least diminish it
or
somewhat.
diminish it. Make it like Dark Souls. There's weapon there's some weapon durability in Souls games, but it lasts for a while and then you can repair it. And it was like the weapons in Breath of the Wild were so fragile that you're constantly cycling through them.
Some
It
of them
just
were like
sucks.
2 or 3 hits and then they were
Yeah.
done.
So I'm hoping for that. But yeah, it's Nintendo did a great job. Like I would say, unlike E3 2019, where Nintendo literally came to save the show, this E3 at the very least was the two big ones that were here, the ones that you would expect, Microsoft and Nintendo, delivered the goods. Everyone else was the worst they've probably ever been, and make the case for why they should, instead of like, if they had so little, then just don't do a showcase, just giving the games to these guys. They're gonna have just as much of a bigger pop because they know how to well present games in such a quick fashion in a way that makes you hyped. That will do better wonders for those games instead of the terrible presentations that they had to submit to us. It's like sometimes less is more. And Nintendo and Microsoft at the very least know that when they have the content, they know how to deliver. And we know Sony knows how to deliver too when they put the things in. So it sucks that they're not here. I wish that they realize. My hope is that Microsoft got such a big pop here that slowly they will feel that maybe we have to be part of this again.
Even if they don't this year, considering how much stuff is coming out for Microsoft 2022, 2023, 2024, they've got a stacked lineup that is all going to be hitting in these next 4 years, that I feel like Sony by the end of it is going to realize it's just a matter of how soon are they going to realize this? Is it going to be a kick in the teeth? Right at the start, and they go, okay, we got to get our game together, or are
Mm-hmm.
they going to just take these L's left and right until eventually they get their self
Yeah.
together and start acquiring more
They should
studios?
be scared about the Game Pass proposition.
That
That's
too.
a fact.
That is a
That's
massive.
that's straight up fact. And they because the weight of $70 games is going to start like being felt more the more Microsoft grows its catalog. And then it's like I tell you, like my allegiances were tested after that after that presentation. I was like, I've been wanting a PS5 for so long, but seeing the value of Xbox, it's
Yep.
like it makes you think. It really makes you think. And I feel Microsoft making people feel that way from the other belly, because we are PlayStation guys. Like we've made it like I love all of them, but I'm main on PlayStation.
Mhm.
This is the first time I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't like it's making me consider making the PlayStation the premium exclusive machine and then do everything else on Xbox. Like
Yep.
I'm seriously like getting close to being there. Just
I'm
on
a
that
little
value alone.
further
Just
away, I think, than you because of
mm-hmm,
all the stuff that I had to deal with on getting the system I currently own. I mean, I
mm-hmm,
already have the PS5, so that's a non-starter for me. But for
mm-hmm,
you who still hasn't made your decision,
mm-hmm.
that's a much bigger deal. And I think there's so many people, just like what we said. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but we said this is getting to that point of people that wanted to buy a PS5 to stay loyal are now starting to find that elsewhere. When they
Mm-hmm.
make that shift, they're going to be welcomed with open arms by
Like
everything Game Pass has to offer.
mm-hmm.
And that experience is going to, I think, really have a paradigm shift for this entire industry.
Exactly. And that's very exciting for me. And it just leads to a healthy three. big, like I've always worried when one of the three is not doing well, because it's always good to have a healthy Nintendo, a healthy Sony, and a healthy Microsoft. And I think we're at a point where the three of them are healthy, and Microsoft needed that because now they got their differentiator and they're the bastion of value right now.
Yes.
Will it be sustainable? Because let's not forget, Netflix used to be so much value for so little money, they had to skyrocket prices eventually, which is because of inflation and all of that. That bubble may pop at a certain point, but usually that bubble pops when the value proposition shows itself that people are willing to keep paying it. It's like Netflix is still as big as ever, and people got to a point where they don't see themselves living without it. Like people still like hold to Netflix. It's very hard for people to not let go of Netflix. They can let go of other ones, but
I'm one of those people, and
Mhm.
even though it's so expensive and I feel like I barely watch anything on it, it's like, but gosh, like what they
Mhm.
do have,
Exactly. So
it holds
so
me.
Microsoft could eventually get there with Game Pass, and because to be fair, like right now they're so desperate in growing Game Pass. Like I mentioned, if you haven't ever signed up for the service, you can have a $1 entry point before switching to 15 a month because it includes Xbox Live and all that because it's the ultimate one. That also includes the EA games, so and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm very excited for that. Like Microsoft finally like they have the shotgun ready. They shot it at Sony. They have to like respond, and I hope it pushes
They were
Sony. Yeah.
prepared today, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think, like you said, this is going to really come down to Sony's response to this,
Mm-hmm.
what they're going to change for policies. Nintendo, once again, doing their own thing very well.
And
Um,
redeeming themselves after last year's fiasco of not having anything other than Animal
yeah,
Crossing and a tiny few other things. So this was a feast. And unfortunately, like many companies gave us vegetables, but Nintendo and Microsoft gave us the steak and the
they gave us
dessert.
the main
Yeah.
courses, and I'd say yeah, the main course being Microsoft with the dessert being Nintendo, and the last few things they were sprinkling in on us. I don't think there was maybe like a couple things that I wasn't interested as much
Mm-hmm.
in, but I wouldn't say there was anything objectively bad that they
Yeah.
showed, unlike some other years.
Yes. So before we wrap up, because we're about to wrap up here, because this is a different kind of show for us, Paul, real quick with no explanation, give me the five games from all of this that we read that you're most anticipated for.
All right, so in no particular order, we have obviously our Breath of the Wild 2. We've
Mm-hmm.
got Soulstice, which
Mm-hmm.
we didn't touch on too much, but I'm really looking forward to it. We've got Halo Infinite. I'm going to give it to Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
And for this one, I'm going to say right now it's still Battlefield 2042 is the
Yeah.
last one, with an honorable mention being Far Cry 6.
Yes.
I'm curious. I want to see more about it, but they're going to need to convince me just a bit more to really sell myself on it. How about you?
Mine, like the most anticipated ones are Metroid Dread. The Garnet, like again, not this is not 1 to 5, just like the ones that spoke to me, like the Metroid Dread, Breath of the Wild 2 again, the Guardians of the Galaxy game,
Hey,
um, replaced the cyberpunkian thing from the Xbox conference, Far Cry 6, Tiny Tina Wonderland, Elden Ring, and Death Stranding's director cut. Those are like the things that, and Back for Blood. I'm gonna put Back for Blood there, and Avatar because here's the idea. Those are like
all
my
right.
10.
All
Yes,
right. I'm cutting
there we
you
go.
off.
And I'm
You
cutting
have
there.
too many on there.
Yes,
You've lost your credibility. I'm
yeah,
shutting this down.
yeah. It's many. There were
Alejandro,
many. Yes.
where can everyone find you?
They can find me on Twitter at a_Doro they can find me also on Twitch at the Slayer Giant, which finally now that I'm back, I'm getting ready to like restart the whole streaming thing. And they can find anything written at thecriticalcorner.com. Now that Loki has begun, like
Man,
I
you're
might
gonna
have
have stuff to talk about with
yeah,
Loki.
I mean yeah, once that thing is done and when games start showing up, I might write something there. So you'll
Awesome.
pop there. And where can they find you, Paul?
You can find me on Twitter at Dork of Art, all one word, and also YouTube Dork of Art, same thing, and Twitch at Angel Sword 21. Until then, I once again working on a few other things before I can sit down and start streaming again. But hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
when I do, I can start doing some really good stuff. But in any case, Alejandro, it's been a pleasure as
All the
always.
time.
This has been
We'll
a
be
nice, meaty conversation we had today.
yes, and we'll be back next week in a more traditional time schedule, this episode will be live either on miraculously on Tuesday or on a Wednesday. But then we're always on Tuesdays in all podcast services around the world and on YouTube. So thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, press X
To play.
See you guys later.